Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We're going to continue on today exploring a special selection, which is where one of you tell me exactly what it is I need to check out. Today's special selection comes at us from Colby. Stars Die by Porcupine Tree, a track from one of their earlier albums. Not really much context to go on, but Porcupine Tree they have a sound. I've got a pretty good idea of what we'll be listening to. Let's dive into it and see what's going on with Stars Die. Alright, we're going with the flow on this. Very jazzy drums. Nothing else is jazzy though. Lots of reverb on the vocals. Lots of reverb on the guitar. Bass holds everything together. Synth pad gives us emotion. Very floaty. Love that crescendo, the build up, the swell into that statement.
Bridges broke, and windows sighed. Cells grew up, rivers burst, sound obscured and sense reversed.
Oh, it's delayed even. Yeah, that one's delayed too. Interesting.
Hello, Neil and Buzz. I'm talking to you by telephone from the Oval Room at the White House. And this certainly has to be the most historic telephone call that's ever made. I just can't tell you how proud we all are.
That's a soundbite. The phone call from the White House to the moon when Neil Armstrong. Why is that important to this track?
Idle mind and severed soul,
Huh. I mean, that's a pretty straightforward track, isn't it? Am I missing something there? It's beautiful. It's gorgeous. The atmosphere of it all, the sense of floating. Um, there's something very calming about the track. But as far as depth goes, this would not be a song that that I would think about that. Um, but that's not a bad thing. We get I don't want to. It is kind of shallowness, isn't it? We do get shallower tracks on the channel, especially through special selection. Let's dive into it. The song starts off with drumming. Jazzy drumming, I should say. I feel like that's important because of the distinction that I've pointed out between jazz and rock drumming, and rock drumming kind of bleeds into metal drumming as well. The difference between them, though, is that jazz drumming tends to be very light. Um, you can have heavier jazz drumming, but for the most part, you don't. It's a lot of minor wrist movement, where rock and metal tends to use arm movement. So it's the difference between this type of movement and this type of movement, and those create very different styles of drumming. And so when we introduce this song, and it has a very light attack to it, it's very loose, very quick on its toes. It has a dexterity to it, honestly. It doesn't feel weighty at all. And I honestly thought we were going to be introduced to something a bit funkier, swingier, maybe even, than we did. Because after that, we got the guitar and the bass, and eventually the piano. Sorry, the piano, the vocals. And all of these shared a very different vision. These were all very laid back, chill, uh, sort of emotional exploration. They all share the same energy, and that's where the drums fit best, I think, is that they're all very chill and laid back, but the drums have an intensity that the rest of the lyrics or the rest of the instruments don't. It's an interesting choice, but one that works. It's one of those moments, well, maybe we'll understand it better when we dig into some more of this, but at least on the surface read right here, it feels like the rhythmic energy doesn't match, but regardless, it still comes together. It's one of those decisions that doesn't seem right on the surface, but actually works really well in practice. Um, and so if we get rid of the drums, we have this really chill bass, barely moves, basically sits around pedal tones, but has leading tones that move into the next pedal tone. A lot of it is these long held out notes, though. The guitar is primarily chords, and the vocals are just very soothing and relaxing. Much like the bass, they don't move very fast. We have a lot of long held out notes. We eventually get some really nice harmonies on them in our chorus. We have these nice swells, the crescendos from a quieter note to a louder note. And there's even a bit of a relaxed, soothing element to that crescendo because instead of changing to we have a little bit of tension in our first chord, and then when we hit our second syllable, we resolve it, and we get this really neat resolution in the chords that the harmony is presenting. But we don't get it on the downbeat as would be expected. We get it after it, and it seems to be varied a little bit depending on the line, but it seems like on the odd numbers, so the first time we do it, and the third time we do it, and the fifth time we do it, it comes on the offbeat of 1, but on the even times that we repeat it, it's almost between the offbeat and the downbeat of 2. So in music, when we count and subdivide like this, we have one E and where and is the midpoint between them, and then one E and the E and the are 25% in and 75% in, and it sounds like we're hitting it on the It is not even just on the offbeat, it's between the offbeat and the next downbeat. There's just so much delay to it. Rather than coming in on the downbeat, it's after it. There's no rush to get there. Whenever we get to changing this note, we get to changing it. And there's just this relaxed feeling that comes from that. And it made me look at some other melodic ideas in the vocals. I also checked the bass and the guitar as well, but I didn't feel them there at all. But there are several vocal lines that play with timing, and it's never to rush, it's never to do something early. It's always to allow something to stay longer than you would expect and to delay landing on the next idea. It's always about taking your time. And I think that's phenomenal. It really fits in with a lot of the music, and it's something that I don't think would have changed much if they had gone for a more rigid feel. But because they went for this stretching out of melody lines, it gives it this added flavor. It's not just a chill song, it's not just relaxing in the chordal emotions, it's also relaxing in the execution. It is, well, actually, our vocals themselves are taking their time to get around to things. There's no rush to having resolutions, there's no rush to getting to that next note or the next syllable, or to finish up a phrase, or to start the next one. It's just whenever you get to it, it's fine. And so, I mean, that is pretty much the read of the entire song here. There's moments of tension and moments of release. There's melody lines that take their time, and everything else is sort of functional under that. The guitars are chords, the bass are pedal tones. The drums are the only thing with any sort of drive, and despite the fact that I said that they work well here, they also feel a bit out of place, especially talking about how relaxed our vocals are. In a sense, they're almost antithetical to the vocals in that they're extremely on point metrically. We don't ever really have any moment where the drums decide to just not hit an accent right now, and we'll get around to it half a beat later. They're always on time, but they have a groove to it. It is faster paced, it is rigid, it is always on time, but it also has a laid back feel to it based on the attack patterns. And so, I don't know. I still don't know what to read into the drums. Technically, they still feel out of place, but practically, in effect, they feel fine. And maybe that schism is supposed to mean something. Maybe the fact that the guitar and bass are rather functional chords and pedal tones. Pedal tones are just the root note of a chord, so they're working within that same chordal foundation that the guitars are. The vocals are delayed, they take their time, they're have no rush to change, whereas the drums are have a quite a bit more energy. They're constantly moving and they're always on time. Maybe this is supposed to be seen as two sides of a coin with the chordal elements holding it all together. I don't know. There was one change to this track, wasn't there? The guitar and bass didn't really change much. We still had chords and root tones. However, the bass did take on a little bit more of a melodic spotlight here, and the guitar moved to a. I think the guitar had a melody as well. I can't remember because I was kind of focused on what was happening in the lyrics, which weren't lyrics, it was a soundbite. It was a soundbite from the president calling Neil Armstrong when they were on the moon for the first time. And I still have no idea what the point of it is. What does it mean? I mean, the whole point of that conversation, it was a historic one. It was the first time we made a phone call outside of the planet, interplanetary phone call. Um, and I believe he even said something like this is a historic phone call, or one of the most historic phone calls made from the Oval Office, or something like that. Um, but it was one way. I Well, at least the soundbite was one way. I can't remember if they were able to have a conversation, but the soundbite only used the president talking, and it was complimentary. It's congratulations. Like, look how far we've come. Look at what we're doing right now. This is massive. And it also fits with the themes of Stars Die. We have this space concept going on. The moon is in space. The moon is surrounded by stars. So, but I don't know. What does all of it mean? What does all of it mean? I was kind of hoping the lyrics would help a little bit, but I'm not thinking they are. It's very obscured, the meaning of all this, anyways. There is absolutely nothing on the surface read of this. There is nothing I can take without diving into metaphor and analogy, but I don't know what they're pointing towards metaphorically, figuratively. The moon shook and curled up like gentle fire, the oceans glazed and melted wire, voices buzzed in spiral eyes, stars dived in blinding skies. Stars die, blinding skies. That stars die, blinding skies is the chorus. That's the swelling vocal harmonized vocal section. That is what's repeated the most throughout this track, and it's also the title, Stars Die. Blinding skies. I mean, when stars die, they go supernova. They release that energy out into the world, or out into the universe, and that energy is used to make new stuff. I don't quite know how all of that works, but that's the general gist of it. They explode, and that energy is released back into the universe. Are supernovas blinding? I don't know. I don't know what a supernova looks like, honestly. It says tree cracked and mountain cried, bridges broke and windows sighed, cells grew up and rivers burst, sound obscured and sense reversed. And then we have the call. Yep. And then the final verse, idle mind and severed soul, silent nerves and begging bowl, shallow haze to blast away, hyper sleep to end the day. Yep. I got nothing. And so, I mean, it leaves me with so many questions about what the intentions are here. Is there supposed to be a message to not burn out? To take your time doing things? I don't know. I hope so. That's a good reading of the music, and I think it kind of lines up with some things in the lyrics, but honestly, I have such a loose grasp of what's going on lyrically that it's tough for me to make any connections there. I'm going to ask for y'all's help. Those are my thoughts on Porcupine Tree's Stars Die. What did you think? What are your ideas about this. What's your perception, your perspective on this track? What's your read? When you're done leaving that in the comments section, head up to the description box. In there you'll find a link for Linktree. Takes you here. You can find ways to support the channel, a link to my music, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of them. We have a creator request up next. Otherwise, I'll be back tomorrow with an album review. We'll be checking out Ioton, Access All Worlds. The name sounds familiar, but I can't put a. I think it's Death. Is that Tech Death? Ioton. I know we've heard that band before. I gotta look that up before I check that out tomorrow. Gotta be prepared. I don't want to go in not knowing what's up when I've already heard something of theirs before. And then Sunday morning, Patreon live stream, and Monday we'll be back with next week's theme of dark ambient. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening whenever you choose to watch my videos.